Looking at the SEC, man, this thing has been clamped down for quite some time now. Time to shake things up, I would hope. But Georgia's obviously been the team that's been most capable of showing that they can do it, but they haven't knocked the door down yet. What are your thoughts, your early thoughts about the SEC? Obviously, we're just diving into spring practice, but your early thoughts about maybe what could be different this year?
I do think that we have an opportunity in 2019 to have more of a race in the East and the West, definitely than we had last year. I mean, if you polled any fair-minded 100 college football fans, almost every single one of them had Alabama winning the West and Georgia winning the East. And although I think those are probably going to be the two favorites again this year, I think Florida, I think a legitimate case could be made this year for Florida in the East. And with Burrow coming back at LSU and sort of the season they had last year. And I mean, I know they weren't even really close, I guess, with Alabama last year, the 29-0 game. And then Texas A&M, I'm a lot higher on Texas A&M, I think, than the average person. But I think Texas A&M has a good shot of being a legitimate top 10 team. And I would put LSU as probably a legitimate top 10 contender, and Florida. So I do think Alabama and Georgia will be, like, if you want to look at like the media days that they do every summer, I do think Georgia and Alabama will be the two teams that come out of media days as the quote unquote favorite. But I think you would be silly not to at least consider Florida out of the East and LSU and Texas A&M out of the West. I think it will be tougher for Georgia to win the East this year than it was the last 2 years, and I think it will be tougher for Alabama.
Yeah, Jimbo had a little bit of the shine taken off of him that last year at Florida State. But if you really look at what he was able to do there, it's easy to say, hey, anybody wins at Florida State. But obviously, Bobby Bowden didn't do it his last 5 or 6 years. And Willie Taggart had some issues, to say the least, last year. So Jimbo's a main player in this thing. And we're already seeing the dividends of what he's been able to do on the recruiting trail, and they just were a much better football team. If you look at Alabama's season in the regular season before they hit Atlanta and Georgia, Texas A&M was the team that gave them the most resistance and obviously took Clemson down to the wire. So Jimbo can get it done, and we're already starting to see that a little bit. Then he goes to a bowl game against NC State and just completely annihilates them. Lou, you bring up Joe Burrow, so I'm interested to see if he's going to take another step, because people were expecting a lot. He pretty much did his job. He didn't produce dynamic scoring or yardage statistics, anything like that. But I think people also have to take into consideration that the kid walked on campus like 2 days before they started practice in August. He wasn't acclimated to anything, and he pretty much just did the job. And I'll be interested to see if he takes off. And his head coach just got an extension today. Coach O, with a 2-year extension, they gave him a $500,000 raise. I don't know if you've ever received any $500,000 raise. That's not come around to me recently, but is the guy doing the job, do you think?
He's done better than I thought he would do. I was really hard on LSU when they named him interim coach to start with, and then sort of made him the permanent coach. But I don't really think I was crazy in thinking that, because when you watched what was going on there, it appeared as though LSU didn't think he was that good of a coach either. I mean, they were looking all over the place for a replacement for that guy. And we just talked about Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo Fisher would be the head coach at LSU right now if he wanted to. LSU did not want Orgeron. So, a lot of the LSU fans give me a hard time because I was wrong about Orgeron. But let's be real, LSU was wrong about Orgeron too. I mean, they were pushing this guy out the door 2 seasons ago. I mean, we were 48 hours away from Jimbo Fisher being announced head coach at LSU, basically. And, that fell through. And they said, well, we're just kidding. We really do like Orgeron. And it was obvious they didn't want him, but it's worked out. I mean, I know LSU has higher goals than what they hit last year. They want to win the West and be competing for playoff spots. I get that. But you look at last year's preseason projections from everybody, they had LSU around the 7 or 8 win mark. No one was that high on LSU last year, so they proved me wrong. They proved a lot of people wrong, and Burrows, I think, is a pretty good quarterback, and I think he's a great quarterback for a team like LSU. I mean, LSU is going to have an NFL defense, and they want to run the ball. Now, they don't have a Leonard Fournette on the roster that anyone's aware of right now. They recruit at an insane level, so we'll see. But, Burrow doesn't have to win a whole lot of games for LSU. He's sort of like Jake Fromm in that way. I question whether or not a Burrow or a Fromm, for that matter, can beat, an Alabama or a Clemson right now, or whatever other team happens to be in that top 3 or 4 at the end of this coming season. It's been a long time since a quote unquote game managing quarterback. And I think that's what most people would consider Burrow to be. I consider Fromm to be that. And I'm the most hated person on planet Earth if you poll Georgia fans, but I think Fromm's a game manager. I mean, I think he's the best game manager in all of college football, but he's a game manager. He's winless when he throws over 30 passes. Georgia is winless under Jake Fromm when they rush for under 4 yards per carry. So I question whether or not in today's college football a game manager can win it all. But I think Burrow is good enough to win a lot of games on a team like LSU.